appear on the screen. Okay, the meeting is now recording, so I will now take this adherent for the Licensing Committee on Tuesday the 22nd of February 2022. I can see that we have present Councillor Bradley, Councillor Carmichael, Councillor Corbett, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Fulton. Do we have Councillor Gray? No, I have apologies from Councillor Greenshields. I can see that we have Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Horsham. Do we have Councillor Hose?
He sent apologies, Carol.
Thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Lennon, Councillor Lockhart. Do we have Councillor Logan?
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you very much. I can see we have Councillor McClyman. I have apologies from Councillor McCreary. I can see we have Councillor McGavigan, Councillor McGeever, Councillor McGuigan, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Marsh, Councillor Miller. Do we have Councillor Ross? No Councillor Ross. I can see that we have Councillor Shearer. I have apologies from Councillor Thompson, and we have Councillor Wardhaw. I can also see we have Councillor Cowie, who is substituting for Councillor Lennon, and Councillor Razak, who is substituting for Councillor Thompson. Officers present today are Jerry Mays and Carol McKee from Licensing, and Lynn Wiley and myself, Carol Lyon from Admin Services. I'll hand back to yourself, Chair.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, folks, item 1 on the agenda, declaration of interest. Do I have any declaration of interest? No. Okay, item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 8. That was held on the 1st of February. I'll move that as a true and accurate record.
Seconded, Chair.
Any items from those minutes? No. Okay, we will go on to item 3, which is the review of taxi fares. Jerry, can you take us through this paper?
Yep, thanks very much, Chair. So this report is on page 9 of the pack. So the purpose of the report is to progress the fares review for the Clydesdale, East Kilbride, Hamilton and Cambuslang and Rutherglen zones of South Lanarkshire. The recommendations are as follows. The committee is asked to approve 1, that the review procedure for Cambuslang and Rutherglen and Hamilton zones be commenced on the basis that there should be no increase in the current fares tariff and that the tariff should remain unchanged. 2, that the review procedure for the Clydesdale zone be further progressed with an increase of 60 pence over a 2-mile hire and various other increases as detailed at Appendix 2, and I'll go through those appendices in a wee minute. 3, that the review procedure for the East Kilbride zone be further progressed with an increase of 40 pence over a 2-mile hire and various other increases as detailed in Appendix 3. As members will be aware, we've got a statutory requirement to review taxi fares every 18 months. There's a formula that's used that was agreed by the committee back in 2013. The present position, now we have to consult with operators before bringing this to the committee, and members I'm sure will be aware that it's a 2-step process, and that we come to committee with recommendations based on the responses we've had from operators, and we then require to progress to advertise any proposed changes, and following the advertisement it will then come back to the committee to make a final decision, taking into account any representations received during the advertisement period. But the present position is that in relation to Cambuslang and Rutherglen, all of the operators were written to. There were only 2 responses. One indicated they felt an increase was necessary and said they would come back with more details, but hasn't come back at all. The other one who replied asked for an increase but didn't say what the increase should be. So based on that, the proposal would be that there should be no change to Cambuslang and Rutherglen due to the lack of response and the lack of detail in the responses we did get. In Hamilton, We received responses from 5 operators. One operator asked for an additional 20 pence to be added to the running mile. One operator has requested an increase but didn't give any details, and 3 out of the 5 who responded indicated that no increase is requested, and therefore the recommendation for the Hamilton zone is that there should be no increase and the fares tariff should remain as stated in Appendix 1. Clydesdale operators were written to, and a response was received from one operator. Now, although he's only one operator, he does hold 42 out of 86 licenses in that zone. He has requested some fairly detailed changes, and I'll jump to that Appendix 2 just now and go through them and then come back to East Kilbride. But that Appendix 2 for Clydesdale is on page 13. Of the pack, and it states the current tariff, and then the proposed changes are highlighted there, or if you're looking at a paper copy it'll be shaded. So the first part of it, hire of a taxi not exceeding 1 mile, the current is £3.30 and the proposal is £3.50. For each additional 88 yards or any part thereof, currently that's 10 pence and the proposal is 12 pence, which would mean an increase over an average 2 mile hire from £5.30 to £5.90. He's also looking to change some of the ancillary matters as stated there. Waiting time to go from 20 pence to 30 pence a minute. Soilage charge to go from currently £30 to £50. A call out charge, there's a maximum currently of £5 and the proposal is for £10. It's noted there if a call out charge is to be levied, there must be agreement in advance for that. And in relation to surcharges, there's a proposal number 3 there. Currently, for additional passengers after 2, there is a 10 pence per passenger surcharge, and the proposal there is to increase that to 25 pence. He's also proposing a change to the way the meters operate for hires that cross the boundary between daytime and nighttime rates. So currently it depends on what scale is in place at the time the hire commences. What he's proposing is that with modern meters, the time that the rate to be applied should change and may change during the course of a journey. So the example given is if you get in at 10 to 12 in the evening, it would start off at the daytime rate, but then when it goes after midnight, the meter would automatically change to the nighttime rate. And similarly, if it begins before 7 AM, it would start at the nighttime rate, but automatically change to the daytime rate when 7 AM is reached. So that's what the proposal is for Clydesdale. For East Kilbride, we've heard from the Taxi Trade Organisation. They've indicated that they would like an increase in various items as detailed in Appendix 3. And if we go to Appendix 3, which is on page 14, they are proposing in terms of the current, I won't read out all of the current there, but I'll read the proposals. So for the initial not exceeding 880 yards, it would go from £2.90 to £3.20. For the next 14 additional 189 yards or any part thereof, 20 pence. Thereafter, each additional 246 yards or any part thereof, 20 pence, which would give you an average 2 mile hire of £6 compared to the current, which is an average 2 mile hire of £5.60. They want to increase their waiting time from 20 pence to 25 pence per minute. And let me see, in terms of surcharges, a surcharge of 60 pence currently.
Jerry, can you
slow
down? No, I want you to slow down for the interpreters, please.
Apologies, I'm getting carried away here, and my apologies to the interpreters. I realise this is a lot of information and I'm just trying to rattle through it, so I will try and take my time. So do you want me to repeat any of it, or are you up to date? I don't mind going back a bit.
Folks, or Grant?
I've just asked Grant, is he happy, would you like he says, no, I'm happy to carry on as long as the interpreter's happy to carry on. Yeah, that's fine. We're fine.
Okay, right,
able to keep up.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Apologies for that. So
On
we're
you go, Jerry.
on page 14 then, just at the bottom, it's surcharges. Number 1 there, they're proposing a change, an increase from 60 pence to 80 pence to be charged for each hire begun between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. A further surcharge, currently 20 pence, and they're looking for 40 pence, may be charged for each hire begun between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. at the weekends, each Friday into Saturday and Saturday into Sunday. Now, these ancillary charges for both Clydesdale and East Kilbride have not changed recently. For Clydesdale, the ancillary items haven't changed since at least 2007. The initial charges last increased in April 2020. I think there was a 30 pence increase at that time. For East Kilbride, the majority of the items haven't changed since at least 2008, but certain charges increased in 2012, and that is set out in the report at paragraph 4.4. A called but not used charge at that time increased from 250 to 280, and this further surcharge of 20 pence at the weekend was added at that time as well. For East Kilbride, the initial charges last changed in 2018. So that's the detail of the proposals, which are based on the responses received from operators, and the decision for the committee today is really, do you wish to go out to advert based on those proposals, or do you wish to modify any of the proposals at this stage, bearing in mind, of course, that you can make any changes that you wish following the advert period, because it will come back to the committee for a final decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Any questions at this time? Bart McGeever.
Hi, thanks very much, Chair. There's a couple of questions that really relate to Clydesdale. In truth, it's not, an area I know very well, and I'll be directed by the kind of members from down there maybe. But with regards to, they seem to want a £50 soilage charge compared to 30 elsewhere, and that's an obviously massive difference. And I'm wondering if the rural nature of it maybe justifies that or not. But it'd be good to know the views of the Clydesdale members. And similarly, surcharging for additional passengers beyond 2, the proposal for to go from 10 pence to 25 pence per additional for third, fourth or fifth passenger, I guess, depending on the size of the car. That seems, I guess, it's a big jump. It's also not a kind of way of charging that I'm familiar with elsewhere. So again, I'm wondering if there's a rural factor there that justifies that, or if it's something the Clydesdale members would be uncomfortable with. So really more a question than any sort of position.
Jerry, do you want to answer that, or I can answer some of the Clydesdale stuff?
I think it's probably, as I understand it, directed to maybe Clydesdale members in relation to your local knowledge of that area and how it might impact on the appropriateness of the charges. I believe certainly in terms of if the committee is so minded, as indicated, you can make modifications, you can accept the proposals as made, or you can modify them as you think appropriate.
Obviously, there is a rural dimension, and that has to be taken into consideration. However, I do share your concerns, Councillor McGeever, about additional persons, charge for additional persons. If the vehicle is on the road to pick up one person, there is no additional cost to pick up a second person or a third person or a fourth person. So really, I think that's a wee bit of a spurious request. The soilage, that's really down to the trade. I think if they are experiencing a lot of that and having to clean the taxi up, and of course that is one of the conditions, that any taxi or any private hire in South Lanarkshire has to be kept to an agreed standard, and it must be spick and span, and they can be put off the road if their vehicle is not up to standard. So I've got a bit more leeway with that one, but yeah, there are some items that have been requested here that I don't have much sympathy for, but I'm willing to be guided by the committee, and obviously when this does come back from consultation, we would then have to, or a future committee would then have to make a final decision on what is allowed and what is not allowed. Okay, is there any other Clydesdale members wishing to comment at this stage? And I see Catherine's got her hand up. I'll bring Catherine in at the moment. Catherine?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Mark kind of summarised what I was thinking as well. When you look at the Clydesdale charges and then you go over the page and you look at East Kilbride, there does seem to be a bit of a difference, and I'm a bit concerned because only 2 years ago did we put up the price of the taxi for the 88 for the 1 mile from £3 to £3.30. I think at that time they wanted even more than that, and we said no. I've got other proposals. I don't know whether I can just tell you them now. Also on the call out charge, the one I don't understand, what is that?
Jerry?
It's a discretionary charge. I mean, I can only really tell you what it says in the current card, that a call-out charge is for hirings where a taxi is called to the hirer's home or other address. A call-out charge may be payable. I can only presume, and this is a presumption on my part, that perhaps due to the rural nature, if it's a long distance from the base in certain circumstances, they might seek to agree a call-out charge, or if there's perhaps any dubiety about whether the taxi's not going to be used, although they've got a separate charge for that. I mean, currently they do have a call-out charge, but it's not a mandatory charge. They can only charge it if the member of the public agrees in advance. So at the time of booking, it means that they could say, well, yeah, we'll take your booking, but you'll need to pay a call-out charge. The person can choose to agree that or not. As I say, they currently do have a call-out charge up to a maximum of £5, and they're looking for £10. But as to the rationale for that, I can only presume that it is due to the kind of rural nature and perhaps some of the bigger distances that they need to be covered.
It
it doesn't really make it any clearer. I still don't know what a call-out charge would be, to be honest. When I can understand the one where you're not being used, but I don't understand that one. But anyway, fair enough. Can I then propose what I think should be the figures, or how we're going to do this, David?
Well, this is for consultation, Catherine. So even if you wanted to email Jerry with your suggestions for changes, that would be acceptable, because we can then make a decision, or a future committee can make a decision on your suggestions. I don't want to get deeply into what all members think should be changed today, because we've got 3 hearings to do this morning.
With all due respect, David, I think this is what we did the last time. We didn't put it out to consultation with the high figures. I think I can be corrected on that.
Well, if you wish to put forward a proposal, I'll accept that. But again, this is for consultation. So if any member tomorrow decided, oh, really, we should be doing X, Y, and Z, it doesn't prevent them. Because today we're only deciding, do we go out to consultation, yes or no? But if you wish to put something forward, Catherine, go ahead.
Okay, then I will do then. So I would say for the not exceeding 1 mile, to make that 340 rather than 350, that still gives them an increase. The waiting time, I think I would mirror what's on Appendix 3, which would be to propose £25 rather than 30. The 1 minute
pence, 25 pence.
25 pence, sorry. Sorry. The next one is pounds. The 1 minute or there or part thereafter, 15 rather than 18. That kind of mirrors what's in the back there as well. The soilage charge, I can kind of agree that there has to be one, and it might be a wee bit more now to get things done. So I would maybe think 40 rather than making it as much as 50. And the passenger surcharge for the passengers, I don't agree with at all.
Right. Okay.
10, so that needs to stay at 10 pence then, I suppose. But I've never been aware of that ever getting charged on our taxis, but maybe I'm not in them often enough.
Okay. I'm happy to accept those amendments. I suppose technically I'll need a seconder for Catherine. Can I have an official seconder?
I'll second that.
I'll
Chair.
second it, Chair.
Thank you, Carol. I think that was Andy Carmichael was in first there. As I say, I'm happy to accept that. Is there anyone otherwise minded before I move on to, there's other councillors wishing to speak? No. Okay. Councillor Cowie, you're first up.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to Rutherglen and Cambuslang, I know there's been no proposed raise in fares and stuff, but I do know what is happening at the moment, and it's a couple of taxi companies in the area that when you get into the taxi, it's your normal £3.60, but then you go 0.3 miles and they're adding an additional £1 at that point, of which 70 pence is going to the taxi operators and 30 pence to the driver. They have, I think it's either 10 or 20 pence. It's only a slight raise in the fare increase. But to counter that, I've had a lot of drivers approaching me and they've actually put the drivers' radios up. So I just wanted a bit more information. Can they do that? Because I don't think a lot of people are aware that when you're getting into the taxi and you're going 0.3 miles, the additional £1 is getting charged, how little is going to the driver and how much is going to the taxi operator. So I'm looking for a wee bit of clarification about that. It's just on the fact they're saying that no raise is proposed, and I know this is already going on. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Jerry, do you wish to comment on that?
The comment I would make on that is that the fares tariff, as I understand it, must be displayed within the taxi. Each taxi for that zone, that represents a maximum charge, and so taxis should be charging in accordance with the current fares card for Cambuslang and Rutherglen. If they're charging any more than that, they're breaching the conditions of their licence, and I would encourage anyone who becomes aware of such a practice to report that to the Licensing Standards Officer for further investigation. Taxis are free, of course, to charge less than the tariff, but the tariff does represent a maximum. And the other point is this applies only to taxis, not to private hires as well. So it could be that private hires may have a slightly different approach to it, but certainly anything that appears to be charging in excess of the current fares tariff should be reported and investigated by the Licensing Standards Officers.
Margaret, if you have any information, if you want to pass that over to the enforcement officers, I'm sure they'll look at it, and your advice to members of the public that approach you would be the same. If they feel that they've not been charged correctly, they can make that inquiry to the enforcement officers and we'll get that checked out. And if there's anybody breaching the rules, they'll be in front of this committee.
Right. Thanks, Chair. Thanks,
Okay.
Jerry.
Councillor McGavigan.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points. The rates that are being asked are by business operators, so they know what their business can cope with. And with the huge increases in running cars and fuel and maintenance, etc., that I do actually think the figures, they come across as reasonable to me. But that aside, and I have to declare I have never been in a minicab, so from that point of view, I don't actually know what the general use of taxis, etc. Now, where I live in South Lanarkshire, if I need a taxi, and I know a taxi will come here, it's 17 miles from Douglas that has to come, and it's 17 miles from Biggar, and it is a steep negotiation to get a taxi. So rural Clydesdale, the call-out charge, etc., it does seem pretty fair, the level of call-out that's there. So that's all that I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to more or less say just along the lines of what Colin had said. If you live in a rural area and there's not a taxi base in your area and you wanted to go 2 streets away, which is like a couple of £1 fare, but the guy's got to do a 20-mile round trip to get you, you can understand why you would want to negotiate. But I like the idea of being able to negotiate it, because if there's a taxi in the area I would worry that they would try and negotiate that surcharge when in fact they're not having to travel that kind of distance. But I don't know how you monitor that. You know, it's like I mean, I've got daughters of an age where they're in and out of Glasgow regularly, and if there's any local firms in the area, it's much easier. But if they aren't, they give them a price rather than putting the meter on. In fact, just last weekend they were quoted 70 quid to come from Glasgow to Hamilton. You know, you accept that or you don't accept that, but that wasn't on the meter. That was before you set foot in the taxi. It was 70 quid, take it or leave it, and she ended up having to take it because she'd been stranded in Glasgow. So I think there's room for abuse there, but I just don't know how you monitor that. And I'm saying that because of the question that Catherine raised about the surcharge. Sorry, the call-out charge. The one about the additional passengers, I think that's just a nonsense. I think they're just chancing their arm there. Likewise with the £50 proposal for the soilage, you know, it doesn't cost you that amount of money to get your car cleaned, but I think that's to cover potential loss of earnings while your car is off the road getting cleaned. But £50 does seem a bit excessive. You know, when you look at other areas, I mean, where is it? We've got so the Cambuslang and Hamilton. If what we're looking at in Appendix 1 is what's come from the operators in the area, and then you look at Clydesdale, it's like, aye, okay, it's a rural situation and it is different, but it's almost like how can it's a word I'm looking for? It's discriminating against people who live in the rural areas. It's unfair. You know, people have a choice to live where they like, you know, but I think it's unfair that people should be paying exorbitant rates for things just because they live in those areas. So again, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what Jerry or any of the LSO, if it's indeed their role to think to come up with a way of maybe watching how this is done and making sure that people are treated fairly rather than just getting ripped off, because that just looks like a license to rip people off here. I'm just a bit concerned about it.
Jerry, do you wish to comment on Councillor McLachlan's?
I mean, I think in terms of the role of the LSOs, a big part of their role is dealing with complaints from members of the public and investigating those complaints, which may and sometimes do relate to the manner in which they've been charged or how charges have been applied. But I think, you know, it's difficult to monitor it in a way without having, you really need the input, I think, from the members of the public as to the evidence of how it's working in practice, if you like.
Okay, if there are no other comments, I'll move that we put this as amended by Councillor McClymont. I'll move that we put it out to consultation. Can we agree that?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
What does that mean, going out to consultation? Who are we going to consult?
It's going to public advert. Jerry, can you run through what we statutorily have to do? We also, I've got to say, we also consult with community councils. You remember the last time we went out, which doesn't seem that long ago, but I'm assured that it was 18 months ago. We agreed to inform the community councils so that because not everybody buys a local newspaper or sees the advert. But Jerry, can you tell us what we have to statutorily do? Yeah,
the statutory requirement, and bearing in mind this is quite elderly legislation now, and it's likely to change, I've been advised, but I don't think it's changed yet. So subject to sort of final checks, just in case there have been any changes that we're not yet aware of. But the position is that it must be advertised in a newspaper. Now, just let's check the word. I think it's a newspaper. Advertisement in a newspaper circulating in their area. So at the moment we are still required to publicise it by way of newspaper advert. As Councillor Shearer indicated, we do also notify the community councils in the area when that advertisement is being made, and then within a period of 1 month after the date of the first publication of the advert, anyone seeing that can make representations, and we must consider any representations duly lodged, and that means, and that's really why it has to come back to the committee again, because after that 1 month consultation, which is just it's a public consultation, any representations received will bring it back to the committee, and then the committee will be asked to make a final decision on it.
Okay. Councillor McGeever.
Sorry, Chair, I know you want to press on, I'll not be long. It's just there, the requirement to advertise in a local paper is generally a very small text-heavy piece on page 57 or something like that, that's buried amongst, you know, another lot of text-heavy stuff. The idea that this is a way of informing the public is, well, is nonsense, frankly, because no one's seen this unless they're really looking for it to begin with. I accept we have to do it, but I'm glad to hear that we also contact the community councils. I think that makes sense. Have we looked to do other things online? The likes of Facebook could be used for targeting people within a set zone or area like Clydesdale relatively cheaply. Actually, it can be done, especially compared to the cost of space in a newspaper. And not an interest as such, but I do have an interest in supporting local newspapers. I'm very happy that we do pay for the space, but it's really a way of funneling money into them. It is not in any way encouraging or informing the public when you get these small amounts of text buried in the back pages. So,
well, we have to do those adverts because that's in statute. This committee has agreed to go further than the statute by informing the community councils. I'm happy that Jerry has a word with the PR department within the council to put something out, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or whatever other means that the council uses, because it's in everyone's interest to have a well-informed public, travelling public, so that they can comment on any changes, and we get a wider feel for it before we make a final decision. So does that cover the issues? Right. Okay. Right, I've moved it and it's been seconded, so that item is over and it will go out to consultation. Next item is item 4, urgent business. I have had none intimated to me. And item 5 is the exclusion of the press and public. I will move the exclusion of the press and public.
Seconded, Chair.
Carol, can you inform me when we are in private?